Hey, how's it going, fight fans? Welcome to mindforcombat. If you're new to this channel, my name's Rohan, and this is my platform where I do fight sports related content. So if you're new here, why don't you help me grow my platform? All you have to do is hit that subscribe button, like the video if you like it, maybe hit that bell icon so you get notified every time I upload a video. With that said, this is a very, very interesting fight that I'm looking to break down, and it's one that I've got a lot of invested excitement in. That's because it involves two of my favourite fighters at 155 pounds. Going into the main event, Kevin Lee is a very interesting fighter, and he's a guy who's in a very interesting position. The once interim title challenger is finally getting some momentum back. He's coming off a win. He's coming off a huge win that kind of, in a way, almost erased the fact that he was on back-to-back losses prior to that fight. So Kevin Lee comes into this fight off a huge knockout win over Gillespie. Now, what's interesting about that fight is, as I had mentioned, prior to that he had lost to Rafael dos Anjos, which was a welterweight fight that he had actually lost to Rafael dos Anjos in, and that was a really poor performance, really, in a lot of ways, and a lot of people were questioning his position after that. You know, where does Kevin Lee fit into this? All of that was getting thrown around. It's kind of interesting with Kevin Lee because not that long before that he was a lightweight top contender and he was on a run. And even after his loss to Tony Ferguson, when he had taken out Edson Barboza in the main event, people were saying that he's the guy that's going to give Khabib Nurmagomedov trouble. But then he went and lost to Ali Aquino in the rematch, and that left him in a very, very weird position. Signs with TriStar, he's still a young man, got heaps and heaps of talent and potential, and he comes out and fights Gillespie. Now, whilst everyone's blown away by the fact that it ended in a head kick knockout, let's not write that for the home run that it was, because actually he had a lot of trouble with Gillespie, particularly in stand-up. Gillespie was landing a lot of shots on Kevin Lee, and Kevin Lee really had to pull out that head kick KO, and it was really, really good the way it finished, and obviously it's very exciting. The fight was a very exciting fight. It was still only in the first round. It's not to say he wouldn't have taken over, but it was an interesting fight in the way it played out and the way it changed perceptions of Kevin Lee coming out of that fight. He takes on a streaking and momentum-filled Charles the Bronx Oliveira, who's one of the most prolific submission artists, well, probably the most prolific submission artist in the history of UFC. He's got the most submission wins in the history of UFC. He rides a 6-fight win streak, and he's a guy who's been on an absolute tear. He looks like he's putting his game all together very, very well. Comes into the fight on a 6-fight win streak. He's a guy that I really like. He's super exciting, really dynamic, very dangerous everywhere, and it looks like he's coming into his own. So this main event puts us in a perfect position for the winner to walk away from this fight and be potentially a win over a win or two away from a title shot. Particularly if Charles Oliveira wins and Dan Hooker wins, why don't we match those both up at the end of the year? If Dan Hooker beats Dustin Poirier, why don't we match those two up for an incredible show? That could be very, very fun. But with that said, let's break this fight down first. These are both two young men in the primes of the career. Kevin Lee is only 27 years old and Charles Oliveira is only 30 years old. Now that figure's kind of surprising considering Charles Oliveira's been around for as long as he has. Remember, he was once one of the youngest fighters in the UFC. Now he's 30 years old. That's how long he's been around in the UFC, and he obviously made a splash when he first debuted with the submission wins over the likes of Elkins and Efrain Escudero at the time. So it seems like he's a lot older than he is, but actually he's still a very young man, both meeting in the primes of their careers. These are both two very experienced fighters as well. Kevin Lee has a professional mixed martial arts record of 18 wins and 5 losses. Like I've mentioned, he's fought for a title previously. He's main evented many shows. He's a top tier talent who's used to the spotlights. And Charles Oliveira, yes, he has main evented previously. I believe it was against Max Holloway when he tore his esophagus, however you pronounce it. But aside from that, he's been in the UFC for a long time and he's very, very much used to the bright lights. He comes into this fight with a professional record of 28 wins and 8 losses. Very interesting. They're both very experienced. They're both main event caliber fighters. Kevin Lee stands at 5'9", which makes him an inch shorter than Charles Oliveira. But what's interesting is that he is the one that comes into this fight with the reach advantage of 3 inches with a 77-inch reach, as opposed to Charles Oliveira's 74-inch reach. Now that is interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how he uses it. And that's where we come to styles. So Kevin Lee, whilst he is well-rounded, and yes, he did get a head kick KO, and he is training with TriStar, and he's rounding out his game, and he's not bad, I see him still predominantly as a wrestler. He's a wrestling-based fighter who uses his wrestling skill set to shine, and I believe that's where he does his best work, although he's got everything. What's interesting about the stylistic matchup of this is that Charles Oliveira is a savage submission artist, and he can finish you at any point in the game. He will be fighting you, and he may just choke you out from anywhere. He's very, very dangerous. But he's also really, really good on the feet, and that's what his most recent run has shown, is that he's evolving into his game. His stand-up's improving, he's getting better at everything, and that's what makes this fight so, so exciting. But whilst I would categorize Kevin Lee as mostly a wrestler, I will categorize Charles Oliveira's most dangerous points in this fight being his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that's a very interesting stylistic fight with a bit of a twist on it, because they can both strike very well as well. Let's look at some of their key wins. For Kevin Lee, we're looking at guys like Michel Prazeres, who's obviously gone up to welterweight, had some success there, tested positive for steroids now, but he was once on a 8-fight win streak in the UFC. That's a good fighter. He's beaten obviously the likes of Edson Barboza, as I mentioned previously. He's not knocked out Gregor Gillespie. He took out Magomed Mustafayev, a guy who I think a lot of, Francisco Trinaldo. Choked out Michael Chiesa after, that whole debacle about his don't talk about my mum, which was kind of funny, to be honest. I found that really amusing. But so he's got some really good wins. Charles Oliveira's got some good wins in his own right as well. He's beaten Darren Elkins, who's a respected fighter, been around for a long time. He's beaten Nick Lentz not once but twice. That's another respected fighter. More recently, he's beaten the likes of Jim Miller to revenge an earlier loss, and he's also beaten David Tamer. David Tamer was 5-0 in the UFC at the point that he fought Charles Oliveira, and actually a former kickboxing world champion. And Charles Oliveira, if you watch that fight, essentially finished him on the feet. That was a brilliant performance as far as I'm concerned. The issues for Kevin Lee is going to be, as the fight wears on, I find that his cardio is a bit questionable, and also I believe that his stand-up can be a little bit predictable. Now, he's getting a bit better at it. He's getting much better at stand-up. He's getting a lot more fluid, but I feel like the opportunities are there for the more natural strikers, and actually I do consider Charles Oliveira the more natural striker of the two. His issue is going to be his chin, though. I believe that he is hittable. Kevin Lee hits hard, and when he has been hit, I've seen Charles Oliveira go down. Kevin Lee can most certainly make him go down. The X factor in this fight for Kevin Lee is going to be his size and his strength. He's a much stronger man. Like I said, he fought at welterweight. Charles Oliveira's fought at featherweight. Naturally, Kevin Lee's the bigger man, and I believe he's the much stronger man. I believe that's going to be his X factor in being able to control Oliveira. And for Charles Oliveira, his X factor is going to be his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's so dangerous with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He can finish you at any point. And actually, his momentum, he's riding a huge wave of momentum right now. 6-0, 6 straight finishes. He's a savage and dangerous dude. And with that said, let's get into my prediction. So what's interesting about this fight is that whilst Kevin Lee has the ability to dictate where this fight goes, I don't believe that he is going to be necessarily comfortable anyway. I think Charles Oliveira won't necessarily be able to take Kevin Lee down, but on the feet he will more than hold his own. I think he's the more diverse striker of the two. Kevin Lee shines with his boxing. I would say Charles Oliveira does it all really good. Like, he's a pure, all-rounded Muay Thai fighter. Now, yes, I know what you're thinking. Kevin Lee got a head kick KO in his last fight. That doesn't define Kevin Lee's game. That was a great moment in a fight, and yes, he's well-rounded. At this level, they all are. But when we're talking about true skill sets, I believe that Charles Oliveira is the better pure striker. The problem is that if Kevin Lee goes to take him down, that I believe Charles Oliveira is going to have such a big advantage over him in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, that he's going to be able to leverage that towards his advantage as well. And we've seen Kevin Lee get submitted previously as well, so that's very interesting. Where Kevin Lee's going to shine is if he puts him against the clinch, against the cage, in the clinch, when he's rustling him about. If he can land, and Kevin Lee's got good boxing, if he can land, he can hurt Charles Oliveira, and he's most certainly the more explosive, dynamic puncher in that sense. But all round, I have a hard time seeing a path for victory for Kevin Lee, especially considering I consider Kevin Lee someone who fades in the later rounds. Now, he may have improved on that since working with TriStar. He may have improved, but I haven't seen the evidence to suggest that he has. He's had one fight with Gregor Gillespie, won that by KO in the first round. Why should I assume he's going to be able to hold his own in the later rounds in this fight? I think Charles Oliveira is so dangerous that Kevin Lee's not necessarily going to want to go down with him, but on the feet, I think he's going to find a lot of trouble from Charles Oliveira. Now, whilst I think Kevin Lee can win this fight if he plays a very tactical game, clinches up with Charles Oliveira, uses his wrestling to negate his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and lands them dirty punches in the clinch, and uses his size to kind of ragdoll him, but avoid all grappling exchanges as and when possible, I think he has a path to victory. But on the feet, I see Charles Oliveira outstriking him, particularly as the fight goes on. And on the ground, I see Charles Oliveira attacking him so much that I believe it's going to make Kevin Lee gas. I believe Charles Oliveira's aggression and the danger that he brings in every realm of this fight is going to be another thing that impacts Kevin Lee's conditioning, and this is going to be the kind of fight that Charles Oliveira excels in. So fight fans, for my official prediction, I'm going to take that Charles Oliveira turns out to be too dangerous for Kevin Lee on both the feet and the ground. It makes him exhausted, and whilst I assume Kevin Lee will have a lot of success earlier, I believe as the fight goes on, Charles Oliveira is going to start to take over, and we're going to see a submission in rounds 3 or 4. So fight fans, for my official prediction, I'm going with Charles Oliveira to get a submission in rounds 3 or 4. Very interested to know your picks on this one. I have an assumption that you guys are mostly going to disagree with me on this one, but when I look at this fight and I try to critically analyze this fight, I really struggle to see where Kevin Lee truly shines in a fight against Charles Oliveira. Now, I might be wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times before. I've got a channel full of wrong predictions to prove that, but I've got some right ones as well. But very, very interested to see how this one goes. I'm going with Charles Oliveira to get the victory. Why don't you guys comment below? Let me know what you thought about the breakdown. Let me know how you see the fight going. This is one that I take a real vested interest in, as I'm a huge fan of both guys. And I believe they've both got a huge ceiling at 155 pounds. This may not be Kevin Lee's night, but he's so young, he will learn from it. So I'm very interested to see where he goes. Thank you for watching, guys. Remember to comment below. If you're new to the channel, like, subscribe, share the video, all that jazz. I'm Rohan, and as always, mindful combat. Thank you.